from one government to another, it appears they are just unstoppable. That super tanker cannot sail into Nigerian's territorial water without somebody knowing that they are coming. And they cannot leave. It is impossible. Our security architecture is that efficient that they see everything that is happening.
So one will be forgiven for thinking there's collusion there.
It is obvious. I mean, I don't ask me to produce proof, but it is just too obvious.
Source for better ways of generating revenue. The House of Representatives is yet to approve this request.
Introducing the Big Issue Show.
Hello and welcome once again to The Big Issue. This is the big ticket governance show that examines issues that affect all and sundry across the 36 states of the Federation and of course the FCT. My name is Buchi Onyubule and I'm very glad to welcome you to today's segment. Interestingly, in all the deep diving that we've been doing, we've actually never touched on what is perhaps the biggest issue to us collectively as a Nigerian, aside of course, security, all and whatnot. We actually never talked about oil. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. What are the issues surrounding our production issues, marketing, distribution? We'll learn all about the business of oil today. All of this and more after a very short break. Welcome back to The Big Issue. I'm joined today by Mr. Olalere Babashola, who's an energy sector expert, previously of Deloitte, of Total Energies. And I'm very glad to have you here today. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Buchi. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Let's just go straight into the meat of the conversation. I talked 2 weeks ago with Kevin Emmanuel about the Naira and all of the issues in the way that, the state of our economy has affected the strength of the currency that is the Naira. And a strand of the conversation, still came back down to oil and all of the issues surrounding it, and which has made us go do a bit of a deep dive into understanding what our issues are. And basically, what are the issues currently? We're at the lowest production that we've had in a long time. Pre-2020, we averaged about over 2 million barrels per day. And since then, despite ebbs and flows, we're currently at about 1.38 billion barrels per day. So let's just go straight into the meat of the issue. Where are these challenges from? Why are we not getting up to the initial quota of the 1.7 million barrels that we had with OPEC? And now we actually got revised down to 1.3. What are the issues? What are the challenges?
Okay, thank you very much. I will answer that by saying that they are multidimensional. It's not just one. Okay. First, the oil and gas business is such that the production you are having today, they are based on investment you've made about 7 years ago. What you invested in is what you produce today. So if we did not invest over the last 5-7 years, there were no investment, no new development of fields. So we shouldn't be surprised that today you don't have the production. Because bear in mind, it's a declining resource. That is when you develop a field, and you are producing, there is a natural decline. So first it ramps up. The way it works is that you start production from a field, production ramps up, then it reaches what we call plateau. You have the plateau for a few years, and there is now a natural decline. What we do to arrest such decline is that you have to keep investing, bring in new wells. So because there are pockets of reservoirs around, you need to bring in new wells to be able to keep that plateau for some time. But you can't fight it for long. It will go down. So such investments were not done. No new developments of fields. In fact, Egina was the last major development we had. Since then, we didn't have any new developments. Nothing new coming. So the result is what we are reaping today. So our ability to produce has been severely impaired. So we can't produce. That is one part. Another is that even for fields where you could produce, the insecurity problem, stealing from the pipelines, it's at hemorrhagic level, really, and it's unbelievable what gets stolen. In fact, the lowest point of it was at a point when some of the producing companies simply realized that there's no point producing. Because at a point, if you remember, Hairs Holding and Elumelu came out to really shout on what they were going through. At that time, on Trans-Niger, Nembe Creek trunk line, for instance, it was discovered that average of 125,000 barrels of oil were injected by the various producers. So that pipeline takes to Bonny, where you export. 125,000 barrels injected. Guess what? What got to Bonny was 800 barrels. Yes, from 125,000, 800 barrels.
So an entire 125,000 or 124,200 barrels were gone?
Gone. Along the line.
They were stolen at different points of the pipeline?
At different points. In fact, Shell ran an intelligent pigging on the line at a point to check, and they discovered there were 91 points where there were leakages.
91 in a few kilometers.
Oh, yes. 91 points. So the stealing was like a free-for-all. It got so bad that for companies that needed associated gas is when you normally when you produce from a well, three things come out in the hydrocarbon: water, oil, and gas. So normally the water, you treat it and put it back in the environment. Oil is what you need, you send for export. So for those who participate like in LNG or have domestic supply obligation, they need the gas. Because of that, they need to produce the oil to meet their obligation.
At a point, some of the companies realize that it's just a waste producing this oil and somebody steals it along the line. So what they were doing was they reject that oil back into the reservoir.
So that it's not stolen. I mean, that is not lost because in future you can reproduce it. You can produce it. So it's better to do that. They got permission from DPR then, NUPRC now, to do such reinjection. So those are quantities we can produce, but we are unable to produce due to such insecurity.
I think the present government, towards the last days of the last government and this current government, have been making efforts.
There is improvement from what Tantita is doing, but I think there's still some quantity out there that are lost. So that's another reason that we are unable to produce apart from
a lack of investment.
Lack of investment. Now, there is also a knock-on effect of the insecurity. Why will somebody want to come and put his money in a system where that is the kind of thing happening? And you must know something. These oil companies cannot manage security. Security is responsibility of government. They don't have an army, they don't have navy, they don't have anything to fight it. So the will on the part of the government, the will must be on the part of the government to fight it. So for them, they are just a sitting duck being hit. So, and why would they bring their money to come and do investment where there are better opportunities in other countries? They are begging them to come. So those are some of the challenges we have.
Okay, I have a two-part question here. The first part is what you've described seems like more a supply situation, a supply issue, not being able to produce enough to export. Is there a demand issue here also? Is it possible also that sometimes we may not have enough demand for the oil?
I won't say that is a major problem today. It is not a major problem. It is not because of demand that we are unable to produce. It is just our capacity to produce. It's our capacity to produce. The world still needs oil. The world will continue to need oil for some years to come, for some time to come.
Okay. One of the first parts you talked about, or rather the second thing you talked about was theft.
Yes.
Security of the oil itself, and not necessarily the infrastructure, the actual oil that's already been produced.
Yeah.
How do they sell it? Where does it go? Because we hear a lot about it, bunkering, this. I mean, you can't use the crude oil in its raw form. You can't put it in your car. You can't put it in your generator. How did it sell it?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are different parts to it.
Yes.
There are the small boys in the community
who steal this crude and use the local method of boiling, what they call
Pour fire.
Yes, exactly, pour fire. So they do it, they get diesel out of it, and they're able to sell it locally. If you are in that axis, you can easily get such diesel to buy. People buy. It's not a problem. There is also the medium scale ones, that there are some small refineries, even in the neighborhood, that the eyes of the international standard is not on them for them to give accountability for where they got their oil from. So those ones, they are crude that can go in barges and can be taken into the neighboring countries where such refining can take place in small refineries that can take just a little for that. But there are the big players. You will recall that there was a super tanker that was arrested on its way around Equatorial Guinea, coming from Nigeria with 3 million barrels of crude. That is not something small. So whoever is behind that kind of thing, they are very big players. They are very big players, and there are refineries all over the world where such people can sell them. So, and they sell them at a discount for them. That is the outlet that you have for them. It's very difficult to go and chase it from the buyer's end. Honestly, it is for us to manage our own in-house issues, because those barges, that super tanker cannot sail into Nigeria's territorial water without somebody knowing that they are coming, and they cannot leave. It is impossible. I've been to room where I saw at Nimasa then. They have even improved on the technology. Every vessel that's moving on Nigerian territorial water, they could see it. Any movement, they could see. So our security architecture is that efficient that they see everything that is happening. So such tanker cannot roll into Nigeria, load that kind of crude and just roll out and nobody knows. So
one will be forgiven for thinking there's collusion there.
Frankly, it is. It is obvious. I mean, don't ask me to produce proof, but it is just too obvious to know that there's some collusion somewhere. Whoever the people are that are behind it, I don't know. I don't know them. Yeah. But from one government to another, it appears they are just unstoppable.
Let's talk a bit also about any other challenges that might come from host communities. Because I moderated a session, a town hall meeting sometime last year for on the PIA in Port Harcourt, and it had many people from different host communities around the South. And you could tell, I mean, I'm not saying that many of them are reacting in terms of trying to stop any production or exploration going on in their communities, but a large number of them were dissatisfied very clearly with the state of things in their communities. And so is this also something that is seen as a challenge in terms of production? I know the popular one that everyone knows about is Ogoni, where we haven't really drilled for a number of years. But are there other ones that are perhaps less sensational or less public, where there is a limitation in terms of how much operations can happen in those spaces?
Okay, sure. Managing the host community challenges is one of the big things that oil-producing companies have to face. For good reason, because I've been to those places and I feel for them. This resource come from their area. It impacts on their life, whichever way you look at it. The way there is limitation to what they can do. In fact, the road they can take to their farm, there are ways, there are direct routes to their farm that they can not go through because there are oil installations that have to be fenced around. So some of them have to go. So something as basic as that, before you even go to impact on the environment, where you have safety flare, because there must be some measure of flaring. So safety flare in the middle of the night, there are all places like daytime. So they have to live with that from one generation to another. So, but then we can't solve problem by looking for who to blame. Things like that, there is royalty you pay. Everything for extracting something, you pay royalty, which is supposed to go down for the benefit of, to manage the impact of the host community. Royalty doesn't get to them. So even other taxes, things, the derivation, when the derivation money is shared, how much of it really gets to these communities? So you don't see, the system just does not work. And for them, when you talk of government, who is the government they can see? It is the oil companies that are there. They know that if they squeeze the oil companies can shout on their behalf.
And government will have to respond.
So in different ways, they look for ways to hold the oil companies to speak on their behalf, which I think I wish there's a better way it can be managed, but different oil companies have to come up with initiatives to, in addition to costs they've been paying, to manage, the interaction with the host community, to reduce and minimize the impacts of their actions on the operations. There are different things companies do. I'm aware of the company I work for about 13 years now. They have been supplying electricity to the host community. Electricity available 24/7, 365 days, and is free of charge. So, and they know that electricity is generated from inside the production facility. So they know that if they go and attack the production facility, they will be in darkness.
Let's put a pin on that and take a very, very short break. And when we come back, I'd like to explore this issue of the host community a bit and then talk about a much bigger organization that is OPEC. You've been watching The Big Issue. My name is Buchi, and I've had Mr. Olalere Babashola in the studio with me. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Issue. I am Buchi, and I have Olalere Babashola with me in the studio today. You were talking about the host community challenges and how that might contribute sometimes to production shortfalls in the way that the relationship dynamics between them and the oil production companies in the South, especially, or wherever oil is generated. And I absolutely agree with you, because I lived in Obigbo for a long time, for about 10 years. And for many years, for many nights, would have really bright nights because you can see the flaring from the Shell production space very, very, very close to my house. And so is the PIA maybe something, does the PIA look to this a bit more in terms of ways that these host communities can do better? Okay,
thank you very much. I think the PIA having a whole section on host community issue, it's a good optic in the sense that it shows that in our oil and gas business, we take the host community issues seriously. As you know, with us in this country, having good laws, we are not lacking in having good laws. It is the implementation. So the modality for implementation is still being set up. There are questions that need to be addressed because there are complexities that come with it. To say who is the host community, for instance. You have well somewhere. Okay, you think where you drill the well is his host community. But there is a flow line that takes it to a production facility in another community. That one may not have well, but that's where you cited the production facility. The place where the flow line is passing through is another community. So you produce from there, you finish, you are sending it to go and join trunk line. For it to go to the terminal, it passes through so many communities.
Multiple host communities.
Multiple host communities. So how do you share the fund, host community fund, between this? And that's why it's called the host and impacted community. So some are host, some are impacted, because you may have a spill in a community that doesn't produce oil. They don't have oil, but because a pipeline passes through them, something happened and they are spill and they are impacted by it. So all these are details, but I think with sincerity in the way we want to work on the part of everybody. Not one part being extremely greedy to say that all the money must be for us. So the situation should get a bit fairer. There should be a fairer impact on the community through the implementation of the host and impacted community bill.
All right, thank you very much. I've really been learning a lot from the way that you've taken us through all of the challenges that we have with the production, right? From the lack of investment, from security challenges, from theft, from to host community issues and all of this. I want to come to another part, which is a bit more political in terms of how we play in the larger space, in the global, wider world. OPEC.
Yeah.
Which is, basically the global oil cartel. Yeah. At the beginning of this year, our production quota was 1.7 million barrels per day.
Yeah.
We couldn't meet it in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we hadn't neared that figure in years, which is why that quota was head-scratching in the first place. And then in June, it was reviewed to 1.34 million barrels per day, basically in line with what our realities are. And what does that actually, for the uninitiated, for those who may not understand what it means, what does it mean exactly? What is the import of that? How does that work?
Okay, so basically we know that OPEC gives the quota to try to moderate the price of oil.
Yes.
Otherwise, if everybody is just producing as they like, oil can drop to $20 per barrel. And the lower it drops, there are some countries like ours that simply cannot produce. I mean, we cannot sell at that because it will be below our production cost. So there are countries that are in OPEC, there are countries that are non-OPEC. So but OPEC plays a major role in influencing the price. And it's in the best interest of everybody to respect OPEC quota. These quotas are given based on your capacity to produce. So the time we were getting a quota of 2.2, 2.3, it's because we had the capacity at that time to produce. So and you see, countries play between themselves. So when they notice that there is a country that's not able to meet its own quota, some can exceed that quota a little bit, going to plead and say, okay, it comes to the same. But among themselves, there are the big boys like Saudi Arabia that, in fact, they can pump and meet the quota for everybody.
The global quota.
But they are responsible in the way I must give it to them. They are very matured and they are responsible in the way they behave. They don't abuse that.
But they also have to be, because they are also very dependent on oil.
Oh,
so
yes,
if the prices drops, their revenue drops.
Exactly. So their revenue drop if the price drops. So it's in their interest to make it a reasonable price. A reasonable price that does not at the same time kill the buyers of the oil. So you have to bear that in mind.
You have to strike that balance.
Yeah, you have to strike that balance. So it's more. So I want to put it that the politics of the quota is a factor of your capacity to produce. If you have new projects, new feeds you've developed that are coming on stream, OPEC will look at it. You will present it as part of your reason why you think you should get more production quota for that. So that is how they play around it.
Okay, so for 2024, Nigeria was asking for an increased, quota 1.58 million barrels per day, saying that we were going to get there. It's something that we can achieve.
Yes.
OPEC however, pegged us at 1.5 million barrels per day.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, we are on 1.34 currently, and we have not at any point clocked anywhere around that. But they're pegging us at 1.5. And the head of the NNPC, everybody within that space are saying, well, we will do enough to do our quota, and we will even have capacity to surpass our quota in 2024. So I'm asking you, who is more knowledgeable about this space, have you seen anything? Have you seen enough to tell you that there is a chance of Nigeria meeting that quota? Or we will see another situation where in June of 2024, OPEC will have to revise our quota downwards again?
Okay. So there is the theory of it. Theoretically,
Yes.
it's possible
Okay.
for us to meet what we're asking for. NNPC is correct in the theory of it. And I will take it in two parts.
Okay.
So one part is coming from what we said. If somehow miraculously they are able to fight the crude theft significantly, that production coming, because what you are seeing that we are calling production is actually the production that gets to the terminal. You understand? That is what is at the terminal. That is what we are reporting as production. It's not the wellhead production. It is not even the injection into the trunk lines that we are calling production.
So you could have maybe 3 million barrels that at the wellhead, you get to the injection point and you're getting 2 point something.
Yes.
And then by the time you get to the terminal, you've lost and lost and lost.
And
up
it's
to that
only
point.
1 million that gets there. So what we are calling production that we are reporting today is that 1 million.
Okay.
So now, those losses along the line, major contributor is the crude theft. If the government is able to summon the will and able to fight that theft, I believe there is
A chance.
a chance that we can ramp up this production just by doing that.
Okay.
The second part is encouraging the companies to do infill wells. Infill wells mean from your existing facility, from your existing fields. Not that you are developing a brand new field, because development of field takes some time, some years. It takes about 5 to 7 years for you to start and finish development of a field, if it's a big field. So, but from existing field, there are additional production you can get from even working on some work over on some wells, then doing some drilling of some additional wells to be able to access some of the reservoir you are producing from. There are some corners in the reservoir that your existing well may not be able to efficiently produce from. So if you drill into those places, you can bring them on. So, and such drilling, if you have the rig, you can finish such drilling sometimes in 20 days. You can drill it. 20 days drilling you can get and complete and put them into production. So
And these are some of the investments we are talking about that we didn't do previously?
No, that is part of them, but it's not the major one.
Okay.
Development of new field is what I'm talking about. But now, that is where, I told you those are the theories of it. Now, what is the reality? The practical part of it is this. The first part, simple one, is on the security. You and I know that there have been forces behind this crude thefts. They won't give up easily. So, and that is where the will of the government to really confront the issue and restore the production off the hand of people who have been stealing the crude. That is left to the government to do. So the second part is on the additional drilling. Now, where it gets tricky is this. When NNPC is promising that they can produce this, they are not the ones producing, I hope you know.
Yeah.
There are operators. They are non-operators in the joint ventures. So these non-operators have their own head office. Their own head office have the different subsidiaries. And those ones have the plan in terms of the production they are expecting from each of the subsidiaries. How do they allocate it? they want to produce more from the low-cost subsidiaries. Unfortunately, Nigeria is not a low-cost subsidiary. We are very expensive. So you will see that those head offices are not keen because they get less for a dollar they invest.
Let's say how much exactly, how much low cost are we? How much does it cost to produce a barrel of crude in Nigeria compared to other places?
No, it's not a single figure. Somebody said,
okay.
because it depends again on the terrain.
I see.
But generally there are factors in Nigeria that makes us more expensive than others. I can give you a little example by way of digression to that. It's if you take a country like Uganda, where they are developing a field there. So there's a field they are developing that has about a billion barrel of oil, 1 billion. And developing it, including oil pipeline that goes through Tanzania to the exports on the sea. So they are doing it for roughly $10 billion. $10 billion. So in Nigeria, we did one that's 500 million barrel. 500 million barrel. And the cost of development was close to $15 billion.
And where was the pipeline headed? Where was
No, it's a deep offshore field in Nigeria. It's a deep offshore field. So that tells you, so just put yourself in the shoes
of the businessman.
I'm
definitely doing it in Uganda.
The choice is easy for you to make.
Because if it's costing you $10 billion for $1 billion and you're routing it through Tanzania, that is maybe through Zanzibar and wherever the ports are.
So now, if you go to Uganda, you are going from your office or your camp to the field. In fact, some of the expatriates can take bicycle and ride it. Through villages, people greet them. You can go and come back. You take a car, you can go to your location and come back. Have you been to Port Harcourt and seen the vehicles going to the airport or going to the oil field? It's not police. You have armed military guys, army in front, army behind, for you to go. And when you are inside the camp, you cannot come out of the place. You see the camp, the kind of fence that are there are, massive concrete. All this translates to costs. Cost of doing business in Nigeria too, you need an approval. Your approval takes 9 months, 1 year for you to get. In those other places, you go to government office, you need an approval, they've processed it. And in a month or two, you have your approval. So all this add up together. And we are just notorious for being a high-cost subsidiary. So for that reason, those ones are not keen on quickly bringing the money to do those your infill wells you want to do when they can get it in another place cheaper. So that is the reality I'm talking about. So in terms of the theory, yes, it's possible. But I don't think it comes that easy. So if those obstacles come, if it doesn't happen, you can now understand part of the reason why it didn't happen. But it's not like if an NPC was deceiving us. They are telling us what the possibilities are. Then the probability now is different. Issue. Yeah.
Let's stick with the ambition that the NNPC has. Put on our aspirational caps for a bit. The federal government in the 2024 budget assumption is targeting 1.78 million barrels per day. I mean, it's a far cry from our 1.34 currently, and a lot above the 1.5 that OPEC has given us. So what I'm going to do when we come back from this really short break is that I'm going to paint a near fictional future scenario and ask you what you think of it. You've been watching The Big Issue. I've been in the studio with Mr. Olalere Babashola, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the big issue. I'm still here with Olalere Babashola, and we've been talking about the oil sector and all of the issues that we've had in terms of our production quota. What we've had, we've traced the issues right up to the point where we're now talking about the hopes and the aspirations, so to speak. We talked about NNPC's hopes, which you say in theory, that they can meet our OPEC quota in 2024 of 1.5 million barrels per day. In the 2024 federal government budget, however, the federal government is benchmarking at 1.78 million barrels of oil per day. Yes. So if NNPC was being hopeful, like you said in theory, or aspirational, well, I don't know what we can describe what the federal government is being. It's very firmly in some would say in the area of vivid imagination. Yeah. But let's imagine now, let's join the federal government and leap into this flight. If they get it, if by some weird magic, someone waves a magic wand and we're able to raise our capacity to over 1.7 million barrels per day, which is over 200,000 barrels per day above the OPEC quota, what happens next?
Okay, thank you very much, Puchi. You can approach OPEC for a revision of the quota. If suddenly, because like I told you, that OPEC, they allocate the quota mindful of the production capacity of the country. If we manage and we are able to demonstrate that our capacity to produce is higher now, there are ways we can present our case to them for a revision of the quota. I'm not saying they will approve, but what they give now is not the end of the world. We can always go back. There are meetings. They hold the meetings, and we have representatives there who can present our case for a review of the quota. And they do review from time to time. They will look at how different countries are doing. And some of the big boys among them, when that is where the bilateral relationship also comes. If you are in good term with a country like Saudi Arabia, even for your sake, they can speak for you. And for them, cutting back 200,000 barrels per day is
not a lot.
It's not a lot for them. So they can make sacrifice for you, which is not just because you are in OPEC, because you are a friend to them as a country. So, but if it happens, yes, there are ways we can renegotiate with OPEC and get to produce.
Yeah, I'm aware that OPEC also sort of appoints independent auditors who audit your capacity, because for the 2024 quota, they had 3 independent auditors, 2 of whom said they're not going to make that 1.5, so which is probably a different conversation. When I was talking about the Naira and how the oil contributes to it with my guest 2 weeks ago, he talked about Nigeria, advocating for Nigeria to not remain in OPEC. And he gave examples of countries like Qatar and Indonesia who have exited this space and seem to be doing well in that sector. What do you think of that?
Well, my personal opinion is that I think we are better off in OPEC. It's a club. It's a club that tries to protect the interest of its member in terms of the pricing. So, and I think it's useful. There has to be the capacity of that cartel itself to not allow the price of crude to drop drastically. I remember there was a time when we were cheating. So we were producing a bit more than our quota, and we were doing it consistently. So OPEC was aware, and the threat they gave to us was that, listen, we know your buyers. We know people buying your crude. We can offer them crude. We can crash price for them so that they stop buying from you. And you will have nothing to do with your oil again. There won't be buyer for your oil. It was not an empty threat.
Because they do have the capacity.
They have the capacity frankly, they have the capacity. They can beat us back to line. So we think it's, in my personal opinion, I think we are better off within OPEC and to be disciplined and follow whatever we agree at OPEC.
Okay. I'm leaning towards your argument because, of course, appealing to authority now. One final question, sort of to round up, is to look at what the oil space looks like in terms of how it relates to us. When I had that conversation, again, kicking it back to that, it was clear that, a large part of our troubles with the Naira is based on how much business we're doing with oil. And looking at the numbers, doing a deep dive into what the reality is, Nigeria's revenue as a government, as a country, is tied to, at least 65% of it is tied to oil and all the other attendant things that it brings. But the GDP, however, is much less than 10%. In fact, it's actually 5.3%, and it's been steadily dropping in terms of the contribution of oil to the GDP. And so I want to ask this question: does it show a resilience or growth of the non-oil sector in terms of the fact that that's supposed to be presented as a good thing? Or does it show how much the oil sector is struggling?
I think it's both of them combined.
Okay.
The government has been making efforts in boosting the non-oil revenue. So revenue from the non-oil sector. And we can't deny the fact that there have been some improvement from the statistics that come from NBS.
Yes.
So we can see that there are improvements in it. But for reason we discussed at the beginning, lack of investment in the sector, the problem of insecurity, at that same time, the production, the activities within the oil space had been going down itself. So that's why I said it's a combination of the two. If we were still doing if activities had been on, the rig count has been the way it was, and we are doing 2.5, 2.3, 2.5, then we won't be talking of that much drop in terms of the contribution by the oil and gas sector. So it's a combination of both of them, actually, in my opinion.
All right, thank you very much. Just as a bit of a foreshadowing, because one of the things you said here is oil is still relevant, oil will still be relevant, and with all of we've seen in the past couple of weeks some of the statements and actions around COP28 in the UAE. What is the health of oil as a sector over the next few years?
Very good health, in the sense that, incidentally, bear in mind, gas is regarded as one of the form of clean energies, gas itself. And the good news is that Nigeria has been remarked to be a gas-rich company with some oil.
So we have more gas than we do oil.
Definitely. We have gas. We have a lot of gas everywhere. Much of the exploration work activities that's been going on in the northern part of Nigeria, they are not new. When I was young, when I newly joined the industry, I joined when we did Kuzari, all those areas we did in Bauchi, all these places. We drilled wells there. We encountered gas, abundance of gas. At that time, we had no use for gas. Remember, there was no LNG at that time, 1993, 1994. There was no LNG. At that time, if we drill a well and we encounter oil, we plug it and say we encounter gas. We plug it and we say it's unsuccessful because it's oil we are looking for at that time. It's unsuccessful.
Interesting.
So today, we are not even exploring for gas. We are doing exploration for gas, and there is abundance of gas. Because in the future, in the energy mix for the future, gas is a part of it. And for some years to come, it will take time. The oil will be lower in the mix. That's what you are going to have. But it's not like if oil is going to disappear in the next 20, 30 years. Completely. There will still be some pockets of oil. But other things, renewables, they will always be there. And as I mentioned, luckily, we have abundance of gas, and gas is regarded as part of the clean energy. So I see a robust future for the energy sector in years to come.
Thank you very much for that. I'm very glad to know that we have a lot of gas, especially for Nigeria. And I mean, I'm not particularly surprised. You can tell after we've eaten some of the food that we eat how much gas we have as a people. Yeah. But yeah, this is where we sort of draw the curtain on the show today. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Alani. I've absolutely enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you for joining. All right, you've been watching The Big Issue right here on Mswitch. You can find all of our old episodes on all of our Mswitch social media handles, as well as on YouTube. My name is Buchi, and I'll see you next time.